So good morning. Welcome to the fiscal year 2022 Spending Affordability Advisory Committee of Howard County. Today is December the 3rd, and we are doing our second meeting of the committee. Today, our focus will be education CIP budget. We are glad to have the leaders from the school system, from community college and library join us today. So we can go to the second page. We have a quick agenda. So essentially we have three major presentations. The first one is a walkthrough of FY21 approved county CIP, and then followed by the school capital budget presentation and also community college. Our library system is not going to present today, partly because they really don't ask anything for fiscal 22. But also their long-term project is in downtown Columbia, and we have a package of presentation in our next meeting on a new culture center, and also that will be the occasion for them to talk about their long-term plan for the library projects there. So next slide is just housekeeping. There are a few members that not made it last time, so I just want to repeat the virtual meeting logistics there. There are many people participating, so just make sure mute yourself unless you are speaking, and as soon as you're finished your part there, please mute yourself again. Sometimes the noise can be difficult to for the group to hear from each other. A second thing is, just in case you have technical issues for logging, which does happen occasionally, make sure you email saac@howardcountymd.gov, and our technology experts will help you. You can also send me a quick email, and I'll try to take care of that as well. The other thing is that, again, because it's a virtual meeting, I would ask all audience to please hold your questions until the speaker finish his or her presentation. We are going to allocate some time for Q&A after each presentation. And last one, just to remind everyone, our meetings are public. Everything will be recorded. And actually this year, for the first time, we are also going to stream on the YouTube. So with that, I will finish my opening. I'll hand it over to Brooke, and he's going to start the overview of last year's approved CIP budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Sun. Good morning, everyone. Since we have some new committee members, I'm going to do a brief overview of the capital budget. Mainly focusing on the 21 approved budget. And since after my presentation, we're going to have the school system and the college talk about their request, I'll try to touch on that also. So with the capital budget, we have two main funding categories. We have GO bonds. GO bonds are the primary funding source that we have, and they're backed by the full faith and credit of the county. Now, the debt service payment associated with these GO bonds that the county issues are paid directly out of the operating budget. Outside of GO bonds, we have a variety of other funding sources, but all of them are restricted for specific purposes. So we have, for example, state grants that are for specific projects, water and sewer bonds, transfer tax that can only be used for the school system, fire, recreation and parks, utility cash, and stormwater fees, among some others. Now, so most of my presentation is going to focus on GO bonds. With the GO bonds, over the years, the county capacity to issue new bonds to fund critical projects that we have has dropped pretty significantly. So if you could look at the table at the top of that page, if we go back to FY11, the 5 years between FY11 and FY15, the county was issuing, on average, $106 million in new GO bond authorization. The next 5 years after that, that average dropped to about $95 million. And in FY21, it dropped to $75 million. So you see how the capacity has been declining over the years. And the main reason for that is we have quite a bit of past debt that's been issued. And these debts have to be paid over a 20-year period. So basically, it's obligating our current revenue and future revenue to make the debt service payments associated with these debt issuance. In addition to that, and we'll touch on this in future presentations, the county's overall revenue growth is not what it used to be. So it's declined from the past. So it's more difficult to afford to service additional debt payments. And so what this has resulted in is over the years, the debt service payment the county has as a percentage of our operating budget is continually increasing. And is projected, at least as of last year, was projected within a couple of years to exceed the policy ceiling that the county has of debt payments being 10% of operating budget revenues. Now, quickly about restricted funds. The challenge in the shrinking capacity is not just limited to GO bonds. It also affects some of our major restricted funds that we have to fund capital projects. One is road excise tax. This funding source has been largely exhausted because of past debt that the county has issued. So the revenue that we get in new taxes is pretty much sufficient just to make payments on past debt that's been issued and not fund new debt issuance. So again, if you look at the table, in the last 10 years, we've been averaging about $10 million in road excise tax, not average, actually total. But in FY21, we had nothing. We had no excise tax that can be dedicated to new projects. And in the next 5 years, we're not projecting that we'll have any capacity to fund new projects using road excise tax. Another category of restricted funds that has a challenge is transfer taxes designated for rec and parks projects. So the county did in FY21 a tax rate increase, increasing the transfer tax from 1% to 1.25%. Even with that, the revenue that's dedicated to rec and parks is not what it used to be. So if you look at the table in the past, between FY11 and 15, the county used up about $66 million in transfer tax revenues to fund rec and parks projects. The following 5 years, that number declined to about $29 million. And FY21 through FY26, on average, we'll have about $3.5 million or so available. So even with the tax rate increase, the amount is far shy of what it used to be in the past. And this capacity issue challenge is not just limited to these two revenue sources, but other revenues within the restricted fund category.
So, for example, I want to add quickly, Brooke, is that transfer tax, as we know, transfer tax are designated to not only a piece for recreation and parks, but also there's a piece to support school project, and also there's a piece to support fire station, etc. And recently, we have been seeing that tax drop very significantly. In fact, the first quarter in fiscal 21, it dropped by 24% from the same period of last year, partly because of the pandemic and economic activity slowdown. But also going forward in a long-term viewpoint, this together with school surcharge are seeing a decreasing trend, partly because the county is seeing less new development, both because the community is maturing and also because the county implemented a full amendment that is going to slow down some new construction, and based on consultants' estimate, that's going to actually cost quite some foregone revenue, including those designated revenue streams there. Thanks, Brooke.
Yeah. And then one interesting item to note about the decline that we're seeing in transfer tax revenues in the current year is, compared to the same period in the prior year, this is despite the tax rate increase. Even with the tax rate increase, the actual revenues are coming in lower than what they did in the past year. Okay, so the next slide I have is focused on the long-term planning. One of the recommendations made in the 2020 Spending Affordability Committee report was to make our long-term capital spending plan in the out years more realistic. In the past, the numbers we had in there were 2 to 3 times above what was affordable, and it was mainly more of a wish list. So one of the recommendations was to align that with the fiscal realities of the county. So we took significant steps in FY21. So if you look at the table with GO bonds for the 5-year capital program, in the FY20 CIP budget, that was the one in the prior year, the 5-year average spending plan was about $212 million. In last year's in FY21 CIP plan, for the same period of time for the 5-year plan, that 5-year average went down to about $97 million. So it's becoming more realistic and closer to an affordable level. So that's something we plan to continue as we develop the FY22 budget. All right, so this chart is focused on GO bonds expenditures. The bulk of GO bonds are issued to support projects within the educational entities, and these include the school system, the library, and the community college. In the FY21 budget, they accounted for 54% of all total GO bonds authorized. Of the education spending, the majority of it, 84% of it, was dedicated to the Howard County public school system. Now, just taking a peek at the preliminary requests that we received from the educational entities for the upcoming year, FY22. The FY22 GO funding request for the educational projects, and in 22, so only the school system and the college. The library didn't have any GO bond request. It's about $26 million above the amount in FY21. So just for illustration purposes, if this request was approved and the GO bond level for FY22 stayed at the same level as what was approved in FY21, which was $75 million, then the education projects would account for more than 90% of the total GO bonds to be authorized in FY22. And that would leave, obviously, less than 10% for other critical county projects. All right. After this presentation, the community college and the school system are going to do their presentation. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the requests they submitted. First, in FY22, the school system county funding request. Last year, the county communicated with the school system a projection of county funding for school projects of $50 to $54 million a year for the next 10 years. This projection was included in our FY21 budget and our long-term plan of the FY21 budget. And interestingly, that plan that was included in the budget was slightly above what the Board of Education requested at that time. As early as the summer, we also communicated the same information to the school system as they were working to develop their FY22 budget request, that the county is going to strive to maintain the funding projection we provided in the prior year of $50 to $54 million on average for FY22 and beyond. And this is despite the challenges the county is facing, like everybody else, with the fiscal challenges and uncertainties surrounding the pandemic. The FY22 request that we received from the school system is approximately $68 million. So that's about $14 million above the $54 million upper range of an affordable level that we communicated to the school system. So this is going to be a big challenge as we start working through the FY22 budget development. In addition to the 22 requests that's above an affordable level, if we look at what's included in the long-term plan between FY22 and FY30, In the 21 budget that was approved, if you look at the table, the second row, it shows you that between 22 and 30, the county included $472 million in spending plan and county-funded spending plan for the school system. In the request that the Board of Education is making for FY22 for the 10-year period, same years, the request includes $569 million. So over a 10-year period, the board's request is $97 million above what we had included in the FY21 budget for the 10-year period. So the challenges we face are not only limited for 22, but obviously for the out years also. Now, for the community college, their request for FY22 was at $17.8 million, and it's identical to what we had planned in last year's budget for the same period of time. And also, if we look at their long-term plan that they submitted, it's pretty identical to what we had included in our FY21 budget over a 10-year period. And for the library, as Javi mentioned, they don't have any GO bond requests, but in FY22, they do have a $500,000 requests and other funding sources. And again, that amount is the same as what was included in the FY21 plan. And as far as your long-term funding is still being developed, so we don't have those numbers yet, but hopefully we'll get a presentation to give us an idea next week. All right, some of the things we're going to focus on as we're working on the FY22 county budget development process tied to the recommendations made by the Spending Affordability Committee in their 2020 report. One thing is we're going to continue the progress we made in FY21 to realign our out-year estimates spending plan closer to our fiscal reality. So we made big strides in FY21, and we plan to continue that. In addition, we need to balance, because we have limited resources, the need to maintain our existing infrastructure with funding some critical new projects. So that's going to be an ongoing process. And another item that the committee recommended and we've been focusing on is trying to account for capital projects, not only the debt service payments associated with them and the funding required in the capital budget, but also the operating impact. So when projects are completed, they're going to need staffing, they're going to need, buildings need to have operating and maintenance costs. So we're working with the departments to try to get a better understanding of that cost and include it in our long-term projection. Okay, so this concludes my presentation, and so hopefully it gives you a little better understanding of the capital process, and we're happy to take any questions you may have. And for our technical folks, if you can make Dan Lubley the presenter for the next presentation for the school system. So if we don't have any questions, then the school system will do a presentation on their FY22 capital budget request.
Good morning, Brooke. Thank you. Dr. Sun, good morning, and to members of the committee, good morning to all of you. Dan, are you ready? I believe that he is. I'm going to go ahead and get started as he's coming on. Good morning once again, and before I turn this presentation over to my staff, there are several items that I would like to highlight. The school system's capital budget, as many of you know, provides for improvements in capacity where they are most urgently needed to relieve crowded schools and give all of our students and staff equitable opportunities to learn and achieve. Our capital budget planning is inextricably linked with planning to our operating budget for reducing and eliminating the health fund deficit and the redistricting process. These functions all work together towards fulfilling the goals and priorities of our strategic call to action. The capital budget also allocates funds for the following. These are our priorities: the construction of new school facilities, addition and renovations to existing facilities, the purchase and relocation of portable classrooms, and technology to support instruction and system operations, which have been a critical focus during the pandemic. The driving force behind much of our capital planning is the need to accommodate enrollment growth, especially in the eastern portion of our county. Although we have experienced a temporary drop in enrollment this year related to the pandemic, enrollment has grown steadily over the past several years and is expected to continue into the foreseeable future. We anticipate adding more than 8,500 students to our total enrollment over the next decade. Given the tightened fiscal climate at both the state and local level, which has been exacerbated by the pandemic, obtaining the necessary funding to support enrollment and new growth will continue to be a challenge. While capital budgets are approved annually, it is important for members of this group to understand that each capital project extends over multiple years and funding will be required during each year of the project. The Board of Education proposed the FY 2022 capital budget totals $108 million and provides funding for the board's 3 priority capital projects, which are now proceeding through construction. These include Talbot Springs Elementary Replacement School, which is scheduled for occupancy for the fall of 2022, which will replace an aging school with a new modern energy-efficient facility and add approximately 160 seats and provide facilities to accommodate many essential resources and services to support students and families in one of Howard County's most disadvantaged communities. New High School number 13, scheduled to open in the fall of 2023, which is a long-awaited project to help relieve the considerable crowding experienced in our Eastern High School. Hammond High School renovation and addition, also scheduled to open in the fall of 2023, which will provide additional seats in a growing part of the county and address building concerns that have been repeatedly delayed. I want you to note that the funding will also be needed in FY 2023 and FY 2024 to complete both the new High School number 13 and the Hammond High School renovation and addition. The capital budget also includes funding for systemic renovations, which are essential to bringing older facilities up to current standards, are becoming more and more important to maintain the quality of our assets as our buildings age. Funding is also included for instructional and business technology to provide replacements and continuous improvement to ensure our systems are secure, standard, and equitable implemented. And additionally, the budget provides for emergency reserve funding in order to be prepared for any unforeseen system needs. I also want to emphasize that both our capital and our operating budgets throughout my tenure have focused on, by necessity, on addressing critical basic needs. For the capital budget, these needs have included funding for new schools and additions and redistricting to address our growing enrollment, as well as essential technologies to ensure continuity of learning and equity for all students. Looking forward, members, we will be better positioned to shift our focus to innovation by funding projects that have been put on hold due to the budgetary constraints. This includes the Middle School, High School Career Development Center, a possible 9th grade academy, regional pre-K centers, additions to our special education classrooms, as well as the replacement of current relocatable classrooms with permanent brick and mortar building space. Local bonds and transport tax provide for the majority of our capital funding, as illuminated in the presentation previously. But our school system also depends on the state school construction funding to provide substantial support for all major projects. A list of priority capital projects that are eligible for potential state funding have been approved by our board. Next, project requests were submitted to the Maryland Interagency Commission, IAC, on school construction for state funding consideration. Over the next several months, we will continue to engage in dialogue with our county executive and the state delegation leaders to collaboratively address the funding challenges to sustain our capital projects. This year's capital funding process includes a number of major milestones which are important to note. In September, the Board of Education approved their proposed capital budget. On February 11th, 2021, the board will adopt the requested capital budget, which will then be submitted to the county executive and the county council. Following a board work session scheduled on April 29th and a public hearing on May 6th, the board is scheduled to adopt the FY 2022 capital budget on May 27th, 2021. During our next meeting on January 14th, I will share with you a more comprehensive picture of our overall budget that includes my FY 2022 operating budget proposal, which I will present to the Board of Education on January 7th. Now, members, I would like to turn this over to Mr. Scott Washington, my Chief Operating Officer, and Mr. Dan Lubley, my Director of Capital Planning and Construction, who will lead us through the presentation. Thank you for your attendance today, and thank you for allowing me to present to you today. Mr. Washington?
Good morning, sir, and good morning, everyone. This is Scott Washington, Chief Operating Officer for the Howard County Public School System, and we want to thank you for the opportunity to present our capital budget, which gives a picture of our capacity needs and our systemic needs for our system. I would like to note, actually piggyback on something that Dr. Martirano said, is that our capital budget is inextricably linked to our feasibility study, which talks about our capacity needs, our enrollment needs, but also to our comprehensive maintenance plan, which deals with all of our systemic structures and all of our systemic projects and facilities. Mr. Lubley and Mr. Tim Rogers, our planning analyst, will go through the presentation in much detail to go through each project and the challenges we face and the projects necessary for our capital budgets, and we will answer any questions we have at the end. Mr. Lubley.
Thank you, Dr. Martirano and Mr. Washington. Good morning. I am Dan Lubley, Director of Capital Planning and Construction. With me today is Mr. Tim Rogers, the Planning Analyst in the Office of School Planning. We are here today to present the fiscal year 2022 capital budget and associated capital improvement program and long-range master plan, as well as enrollment and projection data. For more information on the capital improvement program, please visit the link shown here where the complete superintendent's proposed capital budget, as well as education's proposed capital budget, are posted. As noted by Dr. Martirano, the fiscal year 2022 Board of Education's proposed capital budget totals $108 million. It includes continued funding requests for the construction of Talbot Springs Elementary School replacement and continued construction of new high school number 13 and the Hammond High School renovation and addition. Other project requests include funding for systemic renovations detailed in the systemic renovations project line, as well as roofing projects, playground equipment, relocatable classrooms, technology, school parking lot expansions, planning and design, and barrier-free line items. We will look at each of these requests in more detail. The Talbot Springs Elementary School replacement project will replace the existing school and expand educational program spaces. The total replacement cost is estimated at $43.5 million, with the new facility currently scheduled for completion in September of 2022. The existing school will be demolished and the remaining portion of the project will be completed in December of 2022. The fiscal year 2022 proposed budget includes $5.1 million for construction and fixture, furnishings, and equipment costs. New high school number 13 will be a new facility to accommodate the growth at the high school level in Howard County Public School System. The total project cost estimate for high school number 13 is $130 million. The project is currently scheduled for completion in September of 2023. The fiscal year 2022 proposed budget includes $42.7 million to continue construction of the new high school. The Hammond High School renovation and addition project will renovate and expand the existing school by approximately 200 seats. The total project cost estimate for the Hammond High School renovation and addition is $106.5 million. The project is currently scheduled for completion in September of 2023. The fiscal year 2022 proposed budget includes $29 million to continue construction of the renovation and addition. The systemic renovations project include projects that are needed to bring older facilities up to current standards in lighting, electrical, HVAC systems, reconfiguring spaces, and providing for upgrades to other building systems. The project also requests emergency in order to be prepared for any unforeseen system needs. Listed here are projects that are included in FY 2022 Systemic Renovations Modernization Project. Projects scheduled for systemic renovations in FY 2022 have a proposed budget of $19.6 million. The long-range systemic renovation projects are presented as individual project lines in the fiscal year 2022 proposed capital budget in the FY 2023 through 2027 capital improvement program. As our buildings age, systemic renovations are becoming more and more important to maintain the quality of our aging assets. The systemic CIP presents the projected costs by year to perform the renovations identified as priorities. Roofing projects are essential to protect the entire building. Replacements at Norman Crossing Elementary School and Tridelphia Ridge Elementary School are scheduled. The fiscal year 2022 proposed budget is $5 million to complete these two roof replacements. Equipment projected requests funding to maintain a cycle of replacement system-wide. In fiscal year 2022, $250,000 is adequate to replace both kindergarten playground and a grades 1 through 5 playground at an elementary school. The fiscal year 2022 proposal is $250,000 for playground replacement at one elementary school. The Relocatable Classrooms project provides funds for the relocation of existing portable classrooms or purchase of new portable classrooms to be placed at schools in need of additional capacity. Additional classroom space are needed to help relieve overcapacity schools until such time a permanent classroom space is available. The fiscal year 2022 budget includes $1.5 million for completion of new purchases, relocations, and demolitions of existing units. Technology project funds are required for replacement and continuous improvement to the Howard County Public School System infrastructure, technology systems, and applications to ensure that instruction and business needs are met in a secure, standard, and equitable manner. The fiscal year 2022 budget request $3.75 million for the next phase in cybersecurity improvements, classroom technology upgrades, enterprise infrastructure upgrades, and enterprise applications. School parking lot expansion projects provide for the construction of additional parking spaces and modification of parking lots to improve traffic flow patterns at existing school sites. The fiscal year 2022 proposed budget request is $600,000. The Planning and Design project allows project scopes to be conducted before a project receives funding on its own project line. Some of the benefits include the ability to ask technical questions before the formal design process, discover unexpected design circumstances in existing buildings, selecting the most advantageous project scope, and can significantly reduce the number of change orders needed during construction phase of a project. The fiscal year 2022 proposed budget request is $300,000. The Barrier-Free project is used to implement needed ADA requirements in current buildings as access issues arise. A budget request of $200,000 is requested in the Barrier-Free project for upcoming adjustment needs. The fiscal year 2023 through 2027 capital improvement program outlines the projected requests in these out years. In addition to the projects with funding requests in fiscal year 2022, projects include Dunlogan Middle School renovation and addition to open in September of 2027, new elementary school 43 projected to open in September of 2028, Oakland Mills Middle School renovation to open in September of 2030, as well as future projected funding for ongoing project lines. While the fiscal year 2022 capital budget is $108 million, in years 2023 through 2027, the projected capital budget ranges from $58 million to $93 million each year. Long-range master plan through 2031 totals $934 million. Beyond the projects just identified in the capital improvement program, the long-range master plan includes Centennial High School renovation and addition, new elementary school number 44, and new high school number 14. The state priority list for the state capital budget requests. The state priority list is aligned with the fiscal year 2022 proposed capital budget and the CIP. The list the board received is the eligible priority listing for potential state funding. We estimate at this time that state funding may be approximately $14 to $15 million, with a potential of $4 to $5 million in enrollment growth and relocatable classroom funding. As stated on February 11th, 2021, the board will adopt the requested capital budget, which will then be submitted to the county executive and the county council. The board will hold a work session on April 9th. A public hearing on May 6th is scheduled to adopt the fiscal year 2022 capital budget on May 27th, 2021. As Dr. Martirano noted, the capital budget provides improvements in capacity where they are most urgently needed to relieve crowded schools. Enrollment in our schools increased by over 15% since 2010, a trend which is projected to continue. This year, with the uncertainty created by the pandemic and so much conversation around the impacts of this year's drop in enrollment, we wanted to share some preliminary observations with you. The official kindergarten grade 12 enrollment for school year 2021 is 57,396 students. This is a decrease of 1,231 students from school year 19 and 20, and a difference of over 1,900 students compared to what was projected for school year 2021. Projection was developed and finalized prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic and the adaptations made to the learning model based on face-to-face restrictions for the pandemic. Much of this decrease is due to families' choice of homeschool, transferring their students to private schools, or delayed kindergarten enrollment. We, along with all the other jurisdictions around the country, are studying the enrollment trends, working with other jurisdictions to learn more, and developing the best methods to move forward with our spring 2021 projections. Please note the enrollment numbers shown on this slide exclude Cedar Lane at Fulton campus students because the school develops their own projections for enrollment. For years, the county's experienced continual countywide enrollment growth. Between 2008 and 2018, there was a 16.4% increase in kindergarten through grade 12 enrollment growth. This year's 2.1% decrease in enrollment is exhibited here. Most importantly for capital planning, our county public school system projects significant enrollment growth over the next decade. Based on the spring 2020 projection, we are still expecting enrollment growth of approximately 8,500 students over the fall 2020 enrollment. The result is a capital budget that incorporates both additions and several new schools in future years. Funding for facilities to accommodate the new growth will be a great challenge. The next few slides show a comparison between first-year projections and actual student enrollment at the elementary school, middle school, and high school levels, as well as countywide. The positive numbers reflect a projection lower than actual enrollment, and a negative number reflects a projection higher than actual enrollment. For over 10 years, HCPSS has had an excellent projection accuracy track record. As you can see, the lines diverged this year as the difference between the projections and actuals was 1,977 students. Over the past 10 years, the countywide error rate has ranged from 0.05% to 1.1%. Again, that is 0.05% to 1.1%. This year, the overall countywide projection error rate is about 3.5%. Over the past 10 years, the error rate for the elementary school level has ranged from 0.16% to 1.45%. This year, the elementary error rate was about 5.8%. This level saw the greatest amount of students transferring to homeschool and private schools this year. Over the past 10 years, the error rate for the middle school level has ranged from 0.03% to 0.77%. This year, the middle school error rate was about 2.5%. Over the past 10 years, the error rate for the high school level has ranged from 0.01% to 1.32%. This year, the high school error rate was about 1.9%. This enrollment and projections chart illustrates 6 years of actual enrollment compared to the first year projections by each school level and countywide totals. Region for 2015 through 2020. This illustrates the school year 2021 projection accuracy versus typical accuracy for Howard County Public School System enrollment projections at all regions and levels. Thank you for your time allowing us to present the capital budget as well as enrollment and projections. We would be happy to address any questions.
Mr. Lubley, thank you for your presentation. Before we go any further, I want to acknowledge Dr. Chow Wu, who is a member of the Board of Education, who is also on the Spending and Affordability Committee. If there are questions, we will take those now.
Okay, I don't think we have any questions.
I had one question.
Thanks.
Hello,
Oh, okay.
this is Leonardo.
Great.
I'm sorry, I took me a second to find the mute button. Question as it relates to the enrollment numbers and, excuse me, I know right now you're projecting that this is kind of a one-time hit in terms of...
Hey, thanks for breakfast. It was awesome.
Oh, we heard you. I think we heard you.
I'm sorry, I was saying that right now with the enrollment numbers, I think we're saying this is maybe a one-time hit, but I guess assuming that, let's just say a worst-case scenario, if the numbers, if
You're not muted.
we lost this year, we don't get back, what does that do in terms of, from a funding standpoint, in terms of formulas and so forth? What does that put the school system, whether that's, I guess, from a state standpoint or what have you?
Right. Excellent question. I'm getting a lot of feedback.
All right. If I can ask everybody that's not speaking if they can mute themselves, please. We have a lot of background noise. Okay, Dr. Maturano.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you, Leonardo. Great to hear your voice. Thank you for that extremely important question. And as I've informed our Board of Education and the public, all of us across the state of Maryland, particularly in Howard County, need to watch our enrollment numbers. Every school system in the state of Maryland, the numbers are down for obvious reasons based upon parents making decisions about their young people during the pandemic. As stated in our presentation, we have approximately 1,231 in terms of our enrollment. That's attributed to mainly parents who are who want to keep their children not enrolling them in kindergarten right now. Students in our homeless category who've continued to transfer around, and monitoring who those young people are. The advocacy at the state level, Leonardo, you made the point, which is extremely important, is that during the legislative session, myself and my colleagues and others will be advocating in the development of the governor's budget to be held harmless. We view this as an anomaly, that we recognize the shortfall of dollars that will be there as a result of this, and that we have to apply the funding in different ways to compensate for this aberration. If that is not addressed with legislative relief, then we do have challenges in those out years, as you've acknowledged. And I think it's important for all of us to know not where we are, but where we're looking at in the future. As Mr. Lubley stated, this system, the projects of which we have been advanced, was based upon pre-pandemic numbers. And it behooves all of us to constantly check in, to look where we are, and then the funding associated with sustaining these projects. The challenge for this entire committee and our entire community and our Board of Education is that we have those three major projects going right now, Talbot, Hammond, and the new high school, which are in motion, that need sustained funding to keep those projects going during this time. So in summary, we need to continue to watch that. We need to make certain we understand how that impact is going to occur during the legislative cycle for relief, and then the aspect of what that will translate to the local level as well. But something that I would ask every member of this Affordability Committee to ask that question throughout these next several years as we continue to look at where we are with the challenges of the pandemic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dan and Dr. Materano, we have a question that was texted to us. And the question is how the county's enrollment decline compares to other Maryland counties. I don't know if you have data on other jurisdictions.
Yeah, that information is being tabulated by the state right now. They're verifying it. There is a process that we all go through, which is based upon our planning efforts based on September 30th numbers. Those numbers have to be submitted to MSDE for a verification process, and that process is occurring right now. I can tell you anecdotally that every other school system in the state of Maryland has experienced the same level of decline across the level. And then what that translates to, as I'll illuminate more in my presentation about our overall operating budget in January as I come before this body again, I'll have more accurate information about that. But what that actually translates into real dollars. So there is comparative data. It's being verified by MSDE. Trend data is that all systems are down, and the advocacy level through the legislative process is alive and well in those discussions. But in my January presentation to you, I'll have more accurate information to present to this body.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, just real quick. You said that a lot of this was based on pre-pandemic numbers, and that when you say based on pre-pandemic numbers, is that also your read, the pre-pandemic read of what the county's budget would look like as well? And if it is based on pre-pandemic numbers, are you saying that there might be like a revision to this budget when more realistic numbers come in?
Well, what I'm saying, and I think the committee needs to understand, is that we have been planning these three major projects jointly. The county executive and the delegation and myself have been planning for these three major projects to continue to move forward. We need to watch very carefully where those numbers fall out and if there's any implications for funding, how we adjust. But I want to really emphasize today that we have 3 projects in motion, and those dollars need to be there to sustain them. I invite all of you to ride around to those 3 projects. You'll see an incredible, robust construction occurring at Hammond, as well as the other ones are getting underway. So I want that piece to be very clearly defined. And if there's any adjustments to the dollars that we just can't sustain this, what the implications are with that. I also want to use the opportunity, as I've addressed your first part of your question, to foreshadow a little bit as well. In the early part of our presentations, we said that we are still projected as one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Maryland to project over the next 10 years approximately 8,500 students for the next decade. There's nothing on the horizon as we come out of the pandemic that will slow down that growth, according to our analysis. And we need to recognize as we plan for that future process. I view personally the analysis of our numbers that this aberration is a temporary dip, and it's going to be what I'm defining as an elastic number. I believe that once we get back to a level of normalized schooling, that the numbers will bounce back and then even exceed where we project. So as you ask that question, we have to look at our future as well as the here and now, but not thwart our efforts as we look at the growth that's going to come down the pipeline, and my interpretation and analysis that I view this as an elastic number that individuals will bounce back and return to the school system.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions for the school staff? Okay, thank you, Dan, Scott, and Dr. Maturano. We appreciate your time this morning. If our technical folks can make me the presenter, I'm going to operate the slide for the presentation that Lynn Coleman from the Community College will be doing shortly.
Hold, please.
Group, you order presented now.
Okay, and can you see my my screen?
Not as yet.
Okay. Okay, maybe it's a little bit of a lag, but I've selected to share my screen, and I have the college's presentation up.
It's up now.
Okay, okay. And Lynn, I know you were having some technical issues, so are you able to see this and start the presentation?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I can see it fine. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Lynn Coleman. I'm the Vice President of Administration and Finance at the Community College, and I'm happy to present our FY22 capital budget to you today. Before I begin, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the college. And in October 12th of 1970, the college opened its doors for the first time. So this actually is our 50-year anniversary at the college, and we're very happy to be continuing in Howard County. Brooke, if you can move on to the next slide, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about our business model. Normally, if those of you who are not familiar with community colleges are unique in the sense that our doors are open to everybody. Obviously, you have to have criteria you have to take for admissions, but you still, or anybody's open, it's open access, and we encourage everyone in our community to participate. And students come in at varying levels of readiness and academic experience, so we have to test them and place them according to their abilities. We can move on to the next one. Our vision at the college is we shortened our vision a number of years ago, providing pathways to success, because we wanted this to be something that everybody at the college realized this is what we're here for. We're here to help people discover themselves along with our values. And so this is why we made a short mission statement of providing pathways to success for all of our students. Our main campus, which is the next slide, is located in downtown Columbia. It's 120 acres. But we also have two other sites, the Charles Ecker Business Training Center and the Laurel College Center, which is a partnership with Prince George's Community College and a regional higher ed center as well. So that's just a little bit of background. And then if you want to look at our student enrollment, our head count is about 26,000. Half of that is credit, and then non-credit is the other half. And most of our students go part-time. Many of our students work full-time and take classes part-time. So you can see the percentage there with attendance at our credit area. We put a high priority with sustainability, and we have two lead gold buildings, our health sciences and our science and engineering building. And we're still waiting, but we are anticipating lead gold for the renovations that we did in McEwen Hall, Howard Hall, and Academic Commons. The capital budget that our space needs, just to let you know a little bit of background about our space. Every year the state does projections on where they think our growth is going to be, and based on that growth, what we will need for our planning for the future. So basically, you can see that our growth over the next 5 years is scheduled to be 10%, and 10 years is 19%. And based on that, right now, our current space, we are number 3 in the state with a state deficit, but number 2 when you look 10 years out as far as a deficit in our instructional space and what we need to operate and to continue to operate. Our next slide is about the capital budget request for this year. So there are 2 projects that are requested. First is the Math and Athletics Complex building. This is a fused facility that we had requested, and the reason it's fused is because this is a trend that is happening in some higher education institutions where we put 2 programs together. Typically, you see programs in 2 different buildings, but these were critical areas that we needed. Our math area is growing very rapidly. The state put in requirements several years ago that all students had to complete their math requirement within the first 24 credits. And so they have that has exploded in our math area as far as students taking courses in that particular program. In our athletic area, the building itself was actually constructed in 1969, even though the college didn't open until 1970. The building was constructed in 1969, and the pool was added in 1976. But what will happen is when this building opens, the current building would have been 55 years old. And so we have tried our best to keep this building going. As one board member said, it's like putting lipstick on a pig, because we have cracked walls that we've worked on and leaching chemicals in the building. And every time we have a major snowstorm, we keep our fingers crossed that the roof continues to hold. So this is a building that needs to be replaced, and that's why we made that a high priority as well with our math program. In addition to the math athletics complex, we typically every year have asked for systemic renovations, and there's $2 million in systemic renovations that is being requested. We have used this as sort of our deferred maintenance operation, and the biggest project that we're asking for in this area is the athletic and turf track resurfacing. That hasn't been resurfaced in well over 10 years, and it's starting to peel, and so we need to work on that with the resurfacing and the utilities and drainage in that area. Other projects are smaller projects that we do that are deferred maintenance projects throughout the campus. I wanted to talk a little bit about, if you can go on, Brooke, to the next slide. It just shows when we look at our projects for systemic renovations, we prioritize them. Priority 1 is a critical need at the college, life safety, ADA compliance, and building code efficiencies. And priority 2 are necessary for operations, but we feel like those things could wait 1 year, but not much longer. And so that's where priority 2 comes in. And all the priorities that we've asked for in our systemic renovations budget are priority 1 and 2. 3 is necessary but not critical, and 4 is something that's 5 to 10 years out. So if we can, you can see on here, basically what we're asking the county for this year is $17,844,000, which includes the math athletics complex and the systemic renovations. The state participates 50-50 in all of our projects, and so all of our major projects. They don't participate 50-50 in systemic renovations or deferred maintenance. But this project, the state actually funded additional amounts last year, and we worked with the county to spread this out a little further, and so we could not ask the county for as much in FY 2021, but in FY 22, they will have to match what the state put in this current year. So that's why it's a little bit more for the county this year, but it was more for the state, a little bit more for the county next year, but more for the state this year. And those basically, this is a picture of the math athletics project. The project itself is well underway. The design is basically finished. They finished design development, and the contractor is in the process of starting the bidding for the building itself. So we will be having packages that will be going forward, and construction is scheduled to start this year on the building. And this is a picture of the building that's in the south part of our campus. Just to talk a little bit about some of our accomplishments over the last, since 2007, we've increased our transfer degrees 181%, career and associate's degrees 186%, and our graduation rates have skyrocketed for first time to college students. And we have a very high growth rate among associate degrees when we compare ourselves to our peers. And when we look nationally, we're 79% on the 79th percentile for full-time students who transfer within the first 3 years. And again, last year, this time, we were celebrating our Baldrige Award that we had received for our accomplishments that we have been working for quite some time. So that's my mini presentation on our capital budget. Are there any questions?
Lynn, this is Joan Dreesen. I was wondering if you have seen any increase in the demand for virtual learning, and if you think that may have an impact on your needs for capital projects in the future.
I think in the future that will. I mean, the athletic building has to go forward because it needs to be replaced, and the math area is growing rapidly, and a lot of our students who are in some of those programs need help in person. But we have, obviously since this spring, we went to remote learning, and the majority of our classes currently now are in remote learning. But I know we've heard from our students, they need places to study. They have contacted us, and we even set up Wi-Fi in our garages so they could study in the garage. So we have, we probably, I think going forward, you're probably going to see more virtual learning and more avenues where we do have virtual learning for our students. But I know the students and the faculty both want to continue to have in-person classes as well.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Or?
Sorry, I was on mute. Lynn, this is Steve Pointot. Thank you for the presentation. Quick question for you. On the new building, and maybe I missed it when you were presenting, what's the time frame for delivery for that building?
It actually isn't supposed to be completed until FY 2020, the fall of 2024. So that's the time frame for that. So the construction is actually scheduled to start this year. The design is done and the contractor has been hired and starting to bid the packages for the building.
So is there a potential that not all of those funds will be needed in fiscal year 2022?
I guess as long as it's spread out. I mean, the state has already what happened last year, the state paid more, and so the county is going to have to make up some of that for the fact that we allowed the state to pay more last year. The county is going to have to at least match what they didn't pay last year and what the state contributes this year. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do we have any other questions for Lynn?
Well, thank you very much, Lynn. Okay. So looks like we have a very efficient meet. No, somebody's talking. Go ahead. Does anyone has a question? No. Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. So our next meeting will be at the same time next week, and we're going to continue the discussion on capital project, and we'll switch more to the county side next week. So the agenda is going to feature our focus from DPW to talk about road resurfacing. As you all know, we actually have a huge backlog and continue to grow on that one. And also, DPW is going to discuss about the county's systemic renovation that includes detention centers, senior center in the construction, etc. And also, we invited executive office, an expert to talk about the Downtown Columbia New Culture Center, which is primarily supported by designated revenues in that area. And also our friends in library will join in the discussion because they also have a project down the road for the new library in downtown Columbia. So that will be the focus in our next meeting. I want to thank all our presenters for joining us today. And school has a huge team join us this morning, Lynn, and also my own colleague from budget office, Brock, on that. So does anyone has any other thoughts to share? I want to pause and see. Anything to add? If no, then thank you all for coming to this morning's meeting. I'm glad that we're able to join. We are actually able to adjourn earlier than usual today, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sun.
Thank you. Bye-bye.